This happened a few months ago. I moved to a small town after my breakup. I was looking for solitude and inspiration. The town felt quiet, and my little cottage at the edge of it seemed perfect. I was still healing but thought the peace would help me. On my second night, I sat on my couch working. I noticed flickering lights from the abandoned house across the street. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was just my mind playing tricks. But then I heard it. A soft piano melody drifting through my open window. I felt curious. It was late, and I didn't feel scared. I thought maybe it would help drown out my thoughts. In the days that followed, I listened closely whenever I sat in my living room. The piano music filled the air, beautiful and haunting. I lost track of time wrapped up in the melody. I asked a few locals about the house, but no one knew much. They said it was empty. Still, I heard whispers sometimes, too. It gave me chills, but I felt drawn to it. The house felt like a secret I was slowly being let into. One afternoon, I walked by the house. The windows were so dusty it was hard to see inside. The door looked old and heavy. Every time the music played, it felt like it was calling me. I tried telling myself it was just my imagination, but I wanted to believe it was something more. It was comforting to think I wasn't the only one nearby. Some nights I heard laughter or what sounded like children playing, sounds that didn't seem right. I thought it was just me. My mind must have been playing tricks again. But as I sat listening to the music at night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house wasn't just empty, it was as if it had stories to tell. Then, one night I decided I needed to know more. I stood up and walked to the window. The night was clear, and the music was loud, more intense. I leaned in closer, and that's when I saw him, a man at the piano. The dim light made a shadow around him, and I couldn't move. He looked up at me. His eyes were dark, like there was nothing behind them. He smiled, and it felt wrong. I stepped back from the window, my heart racing. I thought I was imagining things, but the smile stuck with me. I felt cold inside. I didn't know what to do. I told myself to forget it, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. I wanted to leave the cottage, to find out who he was or what the house held. But something stopped me, a deep chill that curled around my heart. I felt trapped, even though I was in my own space. The music played on, and I was a prisoner of my own curiosity. I stared at the shadows and wondered what secrets the house still kept hidden from me. The next day, I couldn't shake off the image of the man at the piano. I tried to focus on my writing, but each sentence felt heavy with distraction. The sounds from the house lingered in my mind, like an echo I wanted to silence but couldn't. I found myself standing at my window again, staring at the abandoned house. The flickering light had returned, and with it, the haunting melody drifted through the air. I made a decision. I wouldn't let fear control me. I grabbed my jacket, took a deep breath, and walked out of my cottage. My heart pounded in my chest, but I forced my legs to move. I crossed the street, the crunching of gravel underfoot loud in the stillness. I reached the front of the house and stood before the door. It sat slightly ajar, as if inviting me in. I hesitated because every instinct in me warned against it. But the music called to me, wrapping around my thoughts and pulling me closer. I pushed the door open, and it creaked ominously. Inside, the house was filled with shadows, the light from the windows muted by grime and dust. The air felt thick, as if it hadn't been disturbed for years. The piano was in the corner, and the room was dim, but I could just make out the shape of the man sitting there, his back turned to me. "Hello?" My voice trembled, barely above a whisper. He didn't respond. I took a cautious step inside, the wooden floorboards groaning under my weight. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I felt an unsettling mix of curiosity and dread. That's when I saw it. A small object glinting on the floor near the piano. I walked over and picked it up. It was a key, old and ornate. My breath hitched as I looked back to the man, but he remained still, seemingly lost in the music. Fortune or fate? I had no idea. The key felt heavy in my hand, like it held secrets of its own. I looked around the room, and that's when I noticed something else. A framed photograph on the wall, half obscured by the shadows. I stepped closer, the picture coming into view. It was a family portrait. A woman smiled alongside two children, and I could barely make out the man in the back. The same man at the piano, only younger. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the woman had eyes just like his. Dark, hollow. Suddenly the music stopped. An awful silence filled the room, and I turned to see the man finally facing me. His smile had vanished, replaced by a look of confusion or perhaps disappointment. I felt the air grow colder, a weight settling around me. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and rough. Before I could respond, the front door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed through the empty house. I spun around, panic rising in my throat. I was trapped. The man stared at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heartbeat. I'm just curious," I managed to say, my voice trembling. I heard the music. "Curious?" he repeated, his tone sharp. "Curiosity can lead to dangerous places." I took a step back, realizing my mistake in underestimating the tension in the room. The key in my pocket felt like it burned against my skin. Something in his gaze held me captive, filling the space with invisible strings that threatened to bind me. "Why are you here?" he asked, his words echoing off the faded walls. My mind raced, scrambling for a reason that made sense. I wanted to tell him about the music, about the photograph, but the truth felt too vulnerable. Then, without warning, a crash echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. We both turned, the sound snapping me out of my stupor. "What was that?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood up abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. The sudden movement broke his spell over me, and I instinctively took a step back. His expression shifted from confusion to something darker. "You shouldn't be here," he warned, and for the first time I caught a flicker of fear in his eyes. Before I could react, he rushed past me, moving towards the source of the noise. I hesitated, torn between following him and fleeing, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The key weighed heavily in my pocket, imploring me to take action. "Wait!" I called after him, but he was already moving further into the shadows of the house. The melancholic atmosphere swirled around me, breathing cold air against my skin. I took a deep breath and followed him. As I ventured deeper, I noticed the walls were lined with peeling wallpaper and frames with cracked glass. Every step felt like an incantation, summoning the stories trapped inside this house. "Where are you going?" I called, more urgently now, but my voice echoed back to me, swallowed by the darkness. With each moment, dread tightened its grip around my throat. Then, I caught up to him in what appeared to be a small living area. The room was cluttered with old furniture and broken toys, remnants of life long past. In the center stood an open doorway leading down into a basement, where the darkness seemed to pulse. The man stood at the edge, looking down at whatever lurked below. "Don't," he whispered, as if the word itself could keep me safe. "Don't what?" I asked, heart racing. "What's down there?" He turned to me, a mix of desperation and urgency flooding his expression. "You don't want to know," he warned. "Trust me." I opened my mouth to argue, but the floor beneath us creaked. A shadow flickered at the top of the stairs, sending a shiver through my spine. Something, or someone, was in the basement. I stepped back instinctively, but the key in my pocket felt even heavier now. I didn't know what I was getting into, but somehow I felt it was too late to turn back. "Please," I said, my voice cracking as fear began to pool around my feet. "I need to know what's going on." That's when I heard it, a soft, desperate sob from the darkness below. "Who's down there?" I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. The sobbing continued, muffled yet piercing, like a siren's wail echoing through the walls of my mind. The man's face paled, his gaze darting between the basement and me. "You shouldn't have come here," he murmured, backing away as if the darkness would swallow him whole. "Someone needs help," I insisted, not bothering to hide the fear in my voice. The sobbing grew louder, a sound of pain that clawed at my insides. "Don't!" he shouted suddenly, gripping my arm with surprising strength. "You can't go in there. You don't understand what's happening." "Then tell me," I demanded, my voice shaking but resolute. I pulled my arm free from his grasp, torn between wanting to run and a pull toward the unknown. The key felt like a stone in my pocket, urging me on. His eyes widened in frustration as the sobbing echoed again, more desperate. The tension in the air thickened, suffocating any remaining courage I had. "It's not what you think," but I couldn't take it anymore. I edged toward the stairs, peering into the abyss below. The darkness seemed to throb, as if alive, and I could see very little. "I have to see," I said, my voice a mere whisper. "Stop," he hissed, his voice low and trembling. Ignoring him, I took a step down. The wood creaked ominously beneath my weight. I could feel the room's cold breath on my skin, wrapping around me like a shroud. The sobbing intensified as I descended, urging me further into the depths. My instinct screamed for me to turn back, but the thought of someone in pain compelled me onward. As I reached the bottom, the darkness enveloped me completely. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, the light flickering to life and casting a small beam into the void. A figure huddled in the far corner, their shoulders shaking with silent cries. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. "Are you okay?" I called, taking one more step closer. To my surprise, the sobbing stopped. The figure turned slowly, and in that moment, my heart sank. The face staring back at me was smeared with dirt and streaked with tears, but there was something familiar about it. My breath caught in my throat. "Help me!" the figure gasped, voice hoarse and weak. They looked like someone I knew, someone I hadn't seen in years. "Sarah," I breathed, shock electrifying my body. The man appeared in the doorway, eyes wild with panic. "I told you to stay back." My mind spiraled as I took in the scene. What happened to her? Why is she here? He hesitated, the shadows flickering like ghosts around us. "You should have listened to me," he said, his expression darkening as he stepped into the light. "Now it's too late." Just then, the lights went out. Darkness consumed us, and fear pulsed in the silence. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, and that we weren't alone in the basement. I stood frozen, heart racing, the darkness pressing in from all sides. My phone's light flickered weakly, illuminating the room in brief bursts, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were closing in. "Sarah?" I called again, my voice trembling. Silence answered me. A sudden noise broke through, a loud crash that echoed off the walls, followed by what sounded like frantic scratching. I spun around, the beam from my phone darting about the cramped space, searching for the source. "Stay close to me," the man pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper, panic lacing each word. He stepped back, spotlighting a metal pipe protruding from the wall, rusted and jagged. "We need to go, now." "Why? What's happening?" I cried, glancing back at where I'd last seen Sarah. "Is she in danger?" "She's not who you think she is," he insisted, his urgent plea only deepening the confusion. "What does that mean?" I shot back, frustration mingling with fear. All I wanted was to help her, but the more he spoke, the more chaotic the situation became. Just then, I felt something brush against my leg. I gasped and kicked out instinctively, but my foot met solid ground. I aimed my phone down, revealing nothing but a dusty floor. "Get back," he shouted, now visibly shaking. "It's coming for you." Before I could react, the lights flickered back on, bathing the room in harsh fluorescent white. The harsh light revealed the corners of the basement, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw movement shifting in the shadows. My breath hitched. "Let's go. Let's get out of here," I urged, grabbing Sarah's hand, pulling her toward me. I could feel her clammy grasp return the crush of panic I felt, but she didn't respond as I expected. Instead, there was a glint in her eye that sent a jolt of dread through me. "Help me," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, but this time it had an edge of something dark. "Please, don't you see?" the man cried, stepping forward. "She's not just hurt, she needs—" The words were cut off when a loud thud reverberated through the basement, rattling the walls and shaking the floor beneath us. Without thinking, I pulled Sarah closer, and we stumbled backward. "What is happening?" I screamed, panic rising. Then, the shadows in the corners began to shift wildly. Figures emerged, indistinct and blurred, their movements erratic. An icy breath of dread curled around me. I turned to the man, desperate to understand. "What did you mean she's not who I think she is?" Before he could answer, the figures surged forward, and I felt a cold grip on my arm. I turned, and a face loomed close to mine, twisted, familiar yet terrifying in the way it seemed to smile. And then everything went dark once more. The chaos echoed in my mind. I could feel hands pulling at me, voices whispering my name, a sickening mix of familiarity and fear. I had to get out. Whatever was happening, I needed to break free. But the basement had become a maze of shadows, and every attempt to escape felt like plunging deeper into the unknown. Suddenly, I remembered the key in my pocket, the one that had felt like a stone before. It was time to find out what it could unlock. I stood in the dark, a haze of confusion and fear settling over me like a thick fog. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I could barely process what was real and what was a nightmare. I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing against the cool metal of the key. It felt oddly comforting. "Focus," I whispered to myself, pulling it out. Light flickered in the basement, just enough for me to see the wall of shadows shifting beside me. The man was gone, the space around me twisting into something I couldn't understand. "Where are you?" I called, but my voice echoed back as if swallowed by the void. Heart pounding, I took a step forward. The key felt heavy in my palm. What was I looking for? A door? A lock? That's when I noticed a faint glimmer at the far end of the basement, like a distant star trapped in the darkness. I hurried toward it, the floor beneath me cold and unwelcoming. The closer I got, the clearer the glimmer became, revealing itself as a small, rusted door beneath an old staircase. My breath quickened as I approached. There, above the doorframe, was a narrow slot, just the right size for the key. "Please," I muttered under my breath, not entirely sure who I was addressing but desperate for help. The figures were still lurking at the edges of my vision, their movements frantic and erratic. I could feel their energy pressing in on me, their whispers growing louder, drowning out my thoughts. I slid the key into the lock, heart racing. It clicked, and I pushed the door open, expecting to find salvation, but it creaked open to reveal another dark space. "Hello?" I called, my voice slicing through the silence. The darkness inside felt deep, like it could pull me under. Then, a chill danced across my skin, and I felt it again, something behind me. I turned, and the man stood in the shadows, panic etched on his face. "Get in!" he shouted, and the urgency in his voice sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I didn't hesitate. I stepped over the threshold and into the dark. The door slammed shut behind me, enveloping me in absolute silence. I held my phone up, the light barely reaching the edges of the room. Dust floated in the air like trapped souls. "What is this place?" I whispered, fear creeping back. My fingers brushed against the cold stone walls. "It's a safe space," the man said, appearing beside me. I could see the sheen of sweat on his forehead. They can't reach us here, but we don't have long. Who? What are you talking about? I demanded, my voice trembling. Sarah. She's not who you think she is, he said quickly, urgency coloring his tone. She's not just human. If she gets out there. Before he could finish, a loud bang echoed from outside the door, shaking the room. I jumped back, and in that moment everything shifted. The air, the shadows, everything felt alive with anticipation. What was that? I gasped, eyes wide. They've found us. We need to act now, he insisted, grabbing my arm. Just then, a strange groan echoed from the walls, a sound that twisted my insides with dread. What are they? I wondered aloud. My heart raced as realization dawned. Whatever had been haunting Sarah was already here, and it wasn't leaving without a fight. The man turned to me, urgency etched on his face. We need to go deeper. It's the only way. That's when I heard it, whispers creeping through the cracks, and the shadows surged closer, consuming the light. I could sense their hunger, and suddenly, dying in this basement felt like a real possibility. Deeper, I choked out, panic threatening to overwhelm me. But before I could protest, he pulled me forward, leading us into the unknown. I had no other choice but to follow. I stumbled behind him, our hurried steps echoing through the narrow corridor that twisted away from the door. The air grew colder, and I could feel the shadows pressing in close, their presence almost tangible. My breath quickened as we descended deeper into the unknown. Where exactly are we going? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Just trust me, he replied, glancing back at me with eyes wide in panic. The basement is a labyrinth. It's darker down here, but that's where they have less power. Who are they? I pressed, desperate for answers. Those who follow Sarah. They have her scent, and they won't stop until they find her, or you, he said, urgently, pushing forward. I hesitated for a moment. Was I really in danger? Or was this a story twisted by fear and paranoia? But before I could argue, we reached a dead end. A thick, heavy door. My stomach twisted as panic rose again. Here, help me, he said, pushing against the door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt as if something invisible held it shut. I joined him, feeling the strain of our efforts, the way the air thickened around us. Maybe it's locked? I suggested, glancing around. My heart sank as I caught flickers of movement in the corners of my vision. Shadows intertwined, making it impossible to know what was real and what was a trick of the dark. It's not locked, he replied, frustration creeping into his voice. It's just... Before he could finish, the door rattled violently, causing both of us to jump back. Where the darkness had felt consuming moments ago, now it felt hostile, ready to pounce if we faltered. Is it them? I asked, my voice shaking. Yes. His voice raised a notch. They're trying to break through. We need to focus. This door has a keyhole. Your key. I fumbled through my pocket, heart pounding in my ears. My fingers grasped the metal, drawing warmth from its surface as I held it up to the door's lock. The shadows grew restless, shifting like faded smoke, scraping over the cold floor and walls. I inserted the key, trembling, praying it would work. As it turned, the door let out a heavy groan, and I felt relief and fear intertwining beneath my skin. The door creaked open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. Inside, flickering fluorescent lights illuminated strange symbols carved into the walls, sigils I didn't recognize. A table in the center held various objects, old bones, shards of glass, and something that looked suspiciously like a doll with its eyes missing. What is this? I gasped, stepping into the room. It's a place of power, he whispered, scanning the symbols anxiously. Whatever Sarah is planning, she needs to be stopped here. Just then, I felt a sharp tug at my heart. The whispers intensified, clawing at my mind, urging me to turn around. My instinct screamed that something was behind me, but before I could react, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. "Get back," the man shouted, shoving me to the side. A figure loomed at the edge of the darkness, its form shifting and merging with the shadows. I couldn't see its face, but the air around it felt charged with an energy that chilled me to the bone. "What now?" I stammered, overwhelmed. He drew closer to me, his voice low and intense. "We fight. Whatever comes through that door is not of this world." As fear gripped me, I realized I hadn't just stumbled into a dark basement. I had stepped into something far worse, something that demanded a reckoning. The darkness felt like a living thing, thrumming around us, pulsating and whispering excessively. I held my breath, the air thick with dread. The figure shifted closer, and despite my fear, I could make out a lurking presence that seemed both shadow and substance. I felt trapped in a nightmare, where escape was just beyond reach. "Do you have anything? A weapon?" I asked, my voice shaking as I glanced at the table. There had to be something we could use. "Stay close," he hissed, scanning the room. "We don't have much time." Before I could respond, a chilling laugh echoed through the darkness, a sound so unnatural it felt like a blade scraping against my sanity. I felt icy fingers creeping up my spine, urging me to run, but terror rooted me to the spot. Then, the figure stepped into the faint light, revealing a gaunt face with hollow eyes that bore into me. My instinct screamed. It wasn't human. It looked wrong. A distorted mockery of life. "What do you want?" I croaked, forcing the words past my dry throat. "Want?" It repeated, its voice dripping with malice. "I want what was promised, and I want to take back what you stole." "What are you talking about?" I managed to stammer, glancing back at him. He seemed paralyzed, fear lodged in his throat. The creature chuckled again, the sound reverberating through the room like a discordant melody. "You took something very important, didn't you? The balance. Your kind loves to meddle." My heart raced. This couldn't be real. I was not responsible for whatever they were referencing. "I haven't taken anything," I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. "Lies," the creature hissed. "You will pay one way or another." I felt a jolt of energy course through me, as if the very act of defiance sparked something inside. I turned to the man beside me. "What do we do?" I whispered, panic clawing at my insides. I saw his gaze shift to the table, and in a flash he grabbed what looked like a shard of glass. "We need to push it back. It feeds on fear. Don't give it what it wants." He advanced toward the creature, brandishing the glass shard like a weapon. Fear danced inside me, but I focused on the urgency in his eyes. I stepped beside him, gripping a long bone from the table. It was fragile in my hand, yet I felt the weight of purpose behind it. "Together!" he yelled, and we charged at the dark figure. The creature recoiled, its laugh twisting into a shrill shriek that echoed off the walls. It lunged forward, reaching out with shadowy tendrils that grasped at the air like hungry mouths. We swung our makeshift weapons, the bone shattering against its dark form as the glass shard cut through the space between us. But it didn't retreat. Instead, it surged forward, and just as I thought we might be swallowed whole, a blinding flash erupted from the symbols on the walls. They lit up like fire, infusing the air with a strange hum. "What is happening?" I yelled, losing sight of the creature in the brilliant light. "I don't know," he shouted back, but his voice held a note of hope. The walls seemed to pulse, the sigils shimmering as the light brightened. I realized then that we had awakened something ancient, something the darkness feared. The whispers quieted, and the creature's form began to flicker, caught between the two opposing forces. That's when I saw it, a small, ornate box hidden beneath the table. It glimmered in the light, beckoning to me with a strange allure. It felt familiar, as if it held the answer we so desperately needed. "Get the box," he shouted, urging me on as I dove for it, my fingers wrapping around the cool, ornate surface. But just as my hope swelled, the darkness churned violently around us. And suddenly, I knew we were not just fighting for our lives. I had unwittingly become part of a far larger game, one that tied to the very essence of this town. I looked up and saw the creature reforming. "You can't escape your fate," it screamed, and the lights began to flicker again. I had to open that box. Whatever lay inside might be our last chance to escape this nightmare. But what would it cost us? I gripped the box tightly, the cool surface grounding me amid the chaos. It felt both heavy and still alive, pulsing with energy I couldn't quite understand. The creature loomed closer, its jagged outline shifting as if the very air around it twisted in fear. "Open it," he urged, his voice cracking in the throes of desperation. Casting one last glance at the creature, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I rushed to the table, using the bone to pry open the box. It flung open with a soft click, and I was met with a brilliant glow spilling out. Inside, nestled in deep velvet, lay a crystal amulet, intricate and shimmering. It seemed to hum with energy, vibrating in response to the darkness surrounding us. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the cool surface. As I lifted it, a wave of warmth washed over me, momentarily pushing back the cold shroud of dread. The creature recoiled, its features distorting in a fresh wave of fury. "Foolish child," it hissed. "You think that trinket can protect you? You have no idea what you've unleashed." Ignoring the threat, I clutched the amulet and felt a strange connection, as if it recognized me. It was almost comforting, like a whisper beneath the chaos. I turned to him. "I think it's our only chance. We need to focus on this." "Make it work," he shouted, dodging the tendrils that slashed through the air. With a determined breath, I raised the amulet. Despite the fear weighing me down, an instinct burst forth. "Leave us," I cried, voice filled with urgency. I didn't know if it was meant for the creature or the darkness itself, but I felt the amulet spark to life. Light erupted, filling the room with blinding brilliance. The creature shrieked, a sound laced with rage and panic as the light surged toward it. It writhed and twisted, tendrils retracting like burnt paper. I felt a surge of power washing over me, the amulet acting as a barrier against its dark influence. But as the creature fought back, something shifted. The brightness faltered, and with it, my confidence. The shadows around us thickened, creeping closer like hands ready to pull us into the abyss. "What's happening?" he yelled, panic etched across his features. "It's not enough. We need to believe," I shouted, though doubt crawled into my mind like an unwelcome guest. The creature's laughter echoed, slashing through my resolve. It felt more present, more alive, as if feeding off my uncertainty. "Remember why we're fighting. This isn't just about us," he cried, his voice cutting through the haze. The amulet pulsed in my hand, reminding me of the stakes. This wasn't just our fight. It was about the balance of our world, and the creature intended to tip it into chaos. I drew on that thought, channeling it into the amulet, giving it every ounce of belief I had left. With a surge of strength, I held the amulet high once more. "No! You don't own us," I yelled at the creature, and this time my voice rang out, filled with conviction. The creature screamed, a horrid sound as the light surged anew, encompassing the entire room. Just as the dark form seemed ready to consume us, the light solidified, pushing the shadows back. It felt like a closing fist driving the darkness away, but with it came the realization that I was not simply fighting for our lives. I was about to engage in a battle much larger than myself. Suddenly the shadows receded, crashing against the walls, but not before a chilling whisper clawed through the flickering glow. "You think you've won? This is only the beginning." With that, the light dimmed, and I faltered back, heart racing. The amulet dropped from my hands, clattering to the floor. The room felt cold once more, and I knew this had only been a skirmish in a much darker war. What had I unleashed, and what lay beyond this moment? I didn't have time to dwell on my questions. The moment the brightness faded, the atmosphere shifted again. Heavy silence hung like a curtain as shadows clung to the corners, once again restless. Both of us stood panting, breaths coming in quick bursts as the adrenaline seeped away, leaving behind a dull ache of fear. What did we just do? The man's voice wavered, eyes darting around the room as if expecting the darkness to resume its onslaught at any moment. "I wish I knew," I muttered, trying to catch my breath. "But we can't stay here. Whatever that was, it'll return." I turned to the doorway we had come through. Behind it I could still hear the whispers clawing their way in from beyond. Something separated us from the world outside, a barrier that felt too thin against the chaos we had invoked inside. Before I could take a step, the air shifted once more. I glanced back at the man. "Do you think they'll follow us?" He shook his head, expression wild. "They wanted her. They'll want her again." "But we don't even know what her means," I retorted, confusion twisting into frustration. "Are we talking about Sarah or something worse? What did we unleash?" His gaze turned somber as he glanced at the door we had barricaded ourselves behind. "We must leave. It can come back stronger. We can't let it find us again." The certainty in his voice left little room for debate. I turned back to the small glimmer of the amulet lying on the floor, its beauty still hypnotic despite the terror it had incited. Hesitating, I quickly snatched it up. "Let's go," I whispered, and we moved towards the door. As we approached, I felt an unsettling chill coming back from the shadows, as if they were whispering secrets to one another. I opened the door slowly, breathing a sigh of relief when it creaked freely. We emerged into a narrow tunnel, its walls raw and cold, covered in dampness. The darkness here felt different, like it was still reeling from our sudden attack. "Which way?" I asked, unsure which direction would lead us to safety. "Right," he said decisively, taking my hand and leading me down the corridor. I followed, each step echoing in the stillness. The way was winding and unfamiliar, making it hard to know if we were progressing or merely circling deeper into the nest of shadows. A sudden flicker of light illuminated what appeared to be another small turn ahead. We sped up, uncertainty behind us and fear ahead. But as we approached, an overwhelming sense of déjà vu washed over me. I paused. "Wait. What? Keep moving," he urged, glancing back nervously. "No, I've been here before," I insisted, the realization clawing at my mind. "When I was in the basement, it was over there." I pointed to where the walls curved eerily, shadows receding to reveal a small alcove hidden from view. The man hesitated but then nodded, the panic in his eyes obvious as we made our way toward it. As we reached the alcove, I felt a cool breeze wash over me, and inside lay a narrow passage, dimly lit by an unknown source. "We have to go through," I said, feeling an innate pull to the path ahead. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Yes, because if we find a way out, we can warn others." "We can stop this," I replied, my heart pounding louder than before. We plunged forward. The sounds of our footsteps echoed in an almost comforting rhythm, leading us out into a wider chamber. The sight that greeted us was haunting. The walls appeared scorched, as if they had resisted countless battles against encroaching darkness. A familiar sense of dread washed over me. In the center of the chamber lay a broken mirror, fragments scattered like stars fallen from the sky. I felt a powerful connection to it, and as I stepped closer, the air crackled with tension. "That mirror," he said, his voice low. "It's a gateway." "Gateway to what?" I whispered, feeling a vibration beneath my fingertips as I brushed the broken edges. "To everything," he responded ominously. It reflects desires, nightmares, fears. Once crossed, it can show you what you most crave, or what you most dread. But you can't fix what was broken. Before I could process his words, shadows twisted in the corners, distorting reality itself. Whispers grew louder, melding into phantasmal cries that raked at my sanity. "We need to leave." My voice pierced through the chaos. As we turned to escape, a sudden flare of light erupted from the broken mirror. I felt a strange pull urging me back toward it, as a vision of Sarah flooded my mind, her face so close yet so distant. She looked at me, eyes wide with an unspeakable torment, and behind her, darkness crept, its hungry fingers stretching toward her, ready to engulf. "No!" I cried, tearing myself away. I grabbed his arm. "Help me push it. It must close." "Are you insane?" he yelled, but I surged forward, driven by the need to protect the figure trapped on the other side. With all my strength, I pushed against the heavy shards, feeling the immediate shift as shadows clung to every surface like a living entity desperate to escape. "I'll hold it, just close it," I shouted over my shoulder. He moved closer, fear mixing with recognition as he took a deep breath and joined in, together forcing the shards to reassemble. I could feel the ancient power swirling, darkness raging against my desire to close it off. "Now!" I yelled. The mirror crackled, light bursting as the pieces clicked together. Shadows clawed at us, shrieking in protest, and a sudden burst of pressure sent us tumbling backward, managed only by the hold we had on one another. Then, silence. The shards held together, holding fast against a corridor of shadows that had tried to seep into our world. Heavy relief flooded my body, but a bitter taste lingered in my mouth. Had we truly won, or simply disguised the danger under a facade? "Are we safe?" he breathed, looking into the mirror. I don't know." I shook my head. "But it's holding—" But as I spoke, a small crack began to spread across the surface, light flickering in protest, shadows coiling back to their source. "We have to go," he urged, tugging on my arm, "now before it comes back." As we darted away from the looming threat, I shot one last terrified glance at the mirror, its reflection pulsing like a dying heartbeat. A whisper lingered in the air, a haunting echo as we fled. But even as we escaped, the questions remained heavy in my mind. What if the darkness found another way? What if Sarah was not the only one, just a puppet for something larger? Or had we merely delayed the inevitable? I moved out of that cottage the next day, hoping to leave behind the shadows and unanswered questions, searching for solace. But a part of me knew it would never fully fade. I still think about that evening sometimes, and wonder if someone else fell into the trap we narrowly escaped. The darkness is a trickster, forever waiting, always beckoning, and I knew our encounter was not the last.